I know just what to do. Hi, my name is Steve, and I hate stick drift. The way things have been going with all of our memory and other computing resources being diverted to projects that do not involve playing video games or building computers, it might be a while before we get new consoles, or the availability of certain computer parts becomes a little bit easier to come by. So I'm thinking this might be a good time to try to make our existing components and accessories last as long as they possibly can. So I'm leading a crusade to take on the horrors of stick drift in our current day consoles and trying my best to get them fixed up and still usable for the foreseeable future. As you just noticed on the demonstration there, I was currently playing a PlayStation 5 game, Ghost of Tsushima, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and our buddy on screen just starts wandering off to the left. Now, some of you might know what causes stick drift, some of you may not. The major component that I'm familiar with is that inside the default sticks that come with the controllers that we get with our consoles and that are available separately use a component known as a potentiometer. And the short version of that is there are two pieces of material inside the stick, and where they make contact on each other, there's sort of a disc and then a bar that pivots across that stick. And when they are making that movement, they are gradually eroding the surface of that material. And over time, as that wears away, it starts to send malfunctioning signals to the console. So it starts to think that you are moving when you are not. As you can see, the controller itself was sitting on the desk, and fellow on screen was moving right along. So we have a problem. What we need to do is replace those sticks with a control interface that does not have physical contact between components. And there are two main options for that these days, the Hall effect stick and then the tunneling magneto-resistant sticks, or TMR. And that's the method I particularly I like to use, are the TMR sticks. And I've tried several different brands of them, and I've found that the sort of sweet spot between price and performance are the K-Silver brand TMR sticks. This is an example of one of those TMR sticks. As you can see, it's basically two little sensors here and then a button for when we click our stick in the middle. And this is the actual component that does the moving. Alright, and we have two of these inside our controllers, and a little cap will sit on the top, and that's your thumbstick. The ones that come with the systems look very similar, but again, this is the potentiometer style stick. It's very difficult to determine from the outside which ones are which, other than the fact you can see the little ring there, but to those who don't work with this sort of thing very often, it can be very difficult to tell which one you have. But short version, if you've never replaced them yourself or had someone do that for you, odds are very good you have one of these potentiometer based sticks inside of your controller. So I've been purchasing defective or faulty sticks off of eBay, which are advertised as having stick drift. Sometimes there are other problems as well, but that's usually the keyword I'm looking for when I pick those up. And I will bring them into my little workshop here in the basement, and I will do some diagnostics just to make sure that that is what we're dealing with, and then I will walk you through the process of how we can fix that. So the first thing I do is I will go to the DualShock Calibration GUI or GUI website, and it can tell us an awful lot about our controller. So let's take a look. All right, here we go. So this is the interface for our website, and as you can see, this is the blue controller that I was just using connected to the console. It is now plugged into my PC so that we can tie it into the website. And over here we have our different buttons just to make sure that they all light up correctly. So it looks like a lot of our other buttons are working fine. But as you can see down there on that particular controller stick, it's currently behaving itself right now, but it wasn't when we got in here. It was giving us a full left signal. Oh, and there we go. I'm not touching the stick, but you can clearly see it moving around down there. And then we also have the input here that lets us know that the signal is staying pretty centered. This one is not. So we do have a classic case of stick drift. There are some tools here that we will use once the replacement is done. You can run them now if you wish, although by running these recalibration tools, it will not actually correct the stick drift. That's a hardware issue, and it's not something that we can fix just with these tools. But we will come back to this site again to check our work, to make sure we didn't break anything, and and to make sure that the fixes we put in place did eliminate the problem. First things first, need to get this guy open. I watched several videos on how to reliably and safely open up a PS5 controller, and I have found that the major sticking point for me were the two tabs that you'll see under here. But I use a tool that looks quite a bit like a guitar pick, and it does a very good job of getting under the black tabs here that hold this trim piece on. And I start by putting them in right under this spot here. I just kind of work it in and slide it till it pops up. So I don't know if you can see that, but I've just lifted the tab. And then we do again the following on this side. There we go. So once you have these two open, you can kind of just run your fingers along here, and it should lift off with a little bit of effort. It won't, I haven't had one shatter on me yet, but it is, you want to be kind of careful. So I just stick my fingers under here. Gently. There we go. That's little tabs on the top you want to be careful about when you're picking them up. Okay, set that to the side. Next up, we have a couple of buttons that we need to remove. We're trying to get access to the screws that are holding the controller closed. So we need to remove the L1 and R1 buttons from the top. Now I have a spudger that is a very good size for this. They normally come a little bit wider than that, and I got this one when I was ordering some other parts. So I'm not sure exactly what the measurements are of this, but really any tool should work. This one just happens to be a good size. I would recommend a plastic one so you don't damage any of the softer materials like the buttons themselves. But I have found that if you take a narrower edge, pull the trigger down to reveal the underside here, you can fit this in quite nicely. And I would recommend holding on to it because these buttons can and will fly off any chance they get. So just give a little push and it should come right out. So there is our button. And we'll repeat the process for this side. Try to do it so you can see. And there we go. Now here we are with the screws. You can see one there, one there, one there, and one there. So we'll go ahead and get those out. This is the screwdriver that I prefer to use, largely because it has a little pivot on the end, so I can just spin it. It's a little easier to use. It's entirely up to you. This one also does have a slight little magnetic pull to it, so if you do happen to lose control, the screw won't go flying off anywhere into the room. So go ahead and just crank those out. I'd also recommend one of these little magnetic trays. I love these things. These are great. So you just drop your screw in, sticks right there. Okay, so those are the 4 screws that hold the case or the shell together. Now I mentioned a little bit earlier 2 small tabs that were holding the case closed that I did not notice at first, It's these guys right here. So you do need to raise these just a little bit. Again, the same spudger that you used for the buttons does a great job on these. There we go. So once those are lifted past their tabs, you can kind of leverage your thumbs to push up and it will pop off. It takes a little bit of force again. It'll make some disturbing noises, but it can take it. There we go. Those are the tabs letting loose, and the back is off of our case now. So now, looking at the inside of our controller, you can see a number of differences that'll happen depending on the variation of the controller that you have. So this one has the 4 wires for the rumble motors and the adaptive triggers. So you can see there we have the yellow, green, black, and red, and that is the sequence in which they need to be soldered onto the board. We can see our microphones and noise canceling microphone ribbon cables here, and then again the ribbon cables for our trigger assemblies. And up here on the top behind the battery you can see the ribbon cable for the touchpad that's on the front. So here of course is our battery. These can also be upgraded. I have worked with several different types of those, but I found that the 2650 milliamp hours also work quite well. They last a lot longer than the stock battery does, but that is something that I often upgrade from my own controllers. So this comes out pretty easily, just lifts right off. Careful, they do have some wires there, and this little adapter is where they plug in. So I will grab onto that near where the wires meet, give it a little wiggle, pops right off. Alright, and then we have our final screw to get to the inner workings of the controller here. So go ahead and get this out. So now here's where we start getting into working with our ribbon cables. So I have a pair of very fine-tipped tweezers that I use. And there are tiny little tabs. It's going to be very difficult for me to show you on this, but that stick out underneath these ribbons here, and I don't know if this will be able to really show us. But if you can get your tips of your tweezers underneath them, you can wiggle this out without too much of a fight. Oop, pops right out. There we go. Then we can also do the same for this ribbon cable. Out it goes. Alrighty. Excuse me. You can usually get these out with your fingers. Just gonna give it a little bit of a rock back and forth. Yeah, they should. They're cooperating. Here we go. Same with this one. Get a good look at my dry skin. Okay. Just a little bit of a pinch, then we can work it back and forth. Pop right out. Alright. Now we can get a good clear look. Excuse me. At our wires here. Now it took me a shockingly long time to notice that there are some guides on the motherboard itself that show us which cables go where. So as you can see here, there's a tiny little R to indicate red, and there's also a tiny Y for yellow. So just as long as you remember that yellow's on top, red's on the bottom, you got a 50-50 chance of getting the other two right. And if you're paying attention at all, or take a picture like I usually do when I'm working on these, that'll get you right every time. So, this is when we get into the big scary soldering section. So I am a big fan of soldering. I enjoy doing it a lot. So I look forward to the chance to get out the soldering iron. And if you plan to ever get into doing soldering, I would strongly encourage you to invest in one of these. Not only do you look cool, but it's an inexpensive tool that you can use that really helps a lot. So we'll get the soldering iron out and get the tweezers back out, and then I will go ahead and just Should just need to warm up the pads just a little bit to get it off, and you can just start removing some of your wires. There we go, there's number one. Okay, we'll go ahead and get the red and black out of the way, give us a little more room to work. Here we go, that's one side. We'll then sort of fold the wires off to the side to get them out of the way. The previous owner may have had a cat. Okay, we'll go ahead and actually I'm going to flip it over. I don't have to worry about running into anything. There we go. And that's all the soldering for now. As you can see, we've got our wires nice and loose. Go ahead and move them out of the way. Oh, and it's already volunteering to come out of the board. Okay, so at that point, there's nothing holding the motherboard in the case. So if you want, you can just push on the sticks and out they go. So here's our board. Thumb caps here. This is the speaker for your controller. I don't know if you've played a couple games that suddenly your voice is coming from your hands. That's not usually a medication problem. That's just the speaker. And it's tacked on with a slightly sticky little cube of foam rubber. So I usually pull that off because at half the time it falls off anyway. And then so I don't lose it, I will put it in the little slot where it usually sits. There we go. So now that we have this out, pull off the caps. I will be replacing these. These look like they got a little gunk in them. I will try cleaning them, but half the time it's just easier and a little cleaner to go ahead and do brand new ones, which are not too expensive. But these are our potentiometer based thumbsticks. So these gotta go. And if you're curious about which revision of the board you have, it will tell you right here. This is the BDM 030. And as you can see, there are a surprising number of contacts that will be desoldering and then resoldering. So this is the group that we're working with for both of these. But we have another situation on our hands. Given that these are used controllers and bought them from anonymous sources online, one thing I usually do before I will list these on my own eBay is I clean these guys. I clean them thoroughly. So I will go ahead and finish removing this black frame that a lot of the things get attached to from the rest of the shell, and we will give everything a nice good scrub. Again, depending on the type of revision of controller you're working with, you may have one screw on each side holding them in, or up to 3 on each side. But we need to get that one, and then the corresponding that one and that one off of this side. So I will go ahead and take those out. One nice thing about the PS5 controllers, the DualSense controllers, that the Xbox controllers unfortunately do not do, is the DualSense controllers use all the same screws for pretty much everything. So you don't need to worry about separating them in by size or shape. They are all the same. So you can mix and match however you want. The Xbox controllers have 2 different size screws. So some for the outer shell, and then some on the motherboards. Actually, they also have a daughter board. Got the whole family in the Xbox controllers. All right. So with those being unscrewed, we can lift this out. Should just pretty much come right out. Sometimes there's a little bit of resistance, but not a whole lot. So one thing that I will also do before we close things back up is, you may notice there's usually a nice little line of gunk that accumulates around your triggers. That I tried on. That one's not too bad. That I will scrub off before sealing things back up. But we're pretty much done with this for now, other than that cleaning process. So I will set that aside. So now we have our the front of our shell. So the first thing I will do is remove this ribbon cable. So I just grab it by the end and push it through. And should not offer you a ton of resistance. It does tend to form into a little curve just due to the fact that it's been held in that position for so long, but that comes out as well. We're about to get everything wet in the sink, so I try to get all the electronic components out of the way. The touchpad, gave me some trouble when I was first learning how to get those out, because this really feels like it's going to break the controller when you do it. But if you put your fingers towards the bottom near where the PlayStation button and the microphone mute button are, put one hand on this frame, the other fingers towards the bottom of that, and you can usually push it right out. It sort of rotates out, and there you go. There's one more screw. This is the last one we're going to be dealing with. Again, all the same size. Nice and easy. This is another piece, the little, I don't know what you would call this. It's another frame. This is the part where the lights from the LED that are on this will shine through, and it'll give you the indication of which player number you are. So if you've seen that before, you'll get a number of lights to indicate which controller you're holding. This also felt like I was going to break it when I was learning to take this off. This little frame is somewhat flexible, so you can give it some stress before running into any problems. So again, we'll put our fingers on the frame and then push towards the bottom of this, and it should pretty much come right out. There we go. And then this little black piece, if you lift up on the side with the screw, it kind of pivots and you can slide it towards the other direction and it will release. Now this circuit board is held to the front piece with a small amount of adhesive. I normally don't submerge this piece. I can usually get anything that's stuck to the touchpad off with some isopropyl alcohol and a brush. So I normally don't submerge this, so I don't have to put this through any additional stress by popping it off. So we'll just set that aside for later. But this will get a bath. So what all goes in the sink? We have a little silicone pad with a carbon contact on the back. We have our PlayStation button. We have our microphone mute button. This one's a little bit more engineered than the others. There are little tabs on the top. It's a little hard to see there, that you need to lift as you push from the other side, and that will release that from its slot. Okay. And then these are the silicone pads for the face buttons. Again, we've got little carbon pads there. And then same thing for the D-pad. Comes right out. And then we have our, I guess it's capture, and I'm old school. I still say things like start and select. So these are the start and select buttons, but I think it's share and menu buttons now. And then again, our face buttons. So they usually just fall right out. Except for a little X there. There we go. All right. So now we've got the whole gang here. take these guys and we're off to the bathroom to get a bath. Now, it may seem a little alarming at first to throw things that are usually associated with electronics into a sink full of water, but it'll be fine. Get ourselves a nice warm bucket of suds here. And as with anything, Dawn will get you there 99% of the time. I find little dish scrubbing tools like this one, or this one, do a perfectly fine job. Go ahead and toss everybody in. Alright. One other specialized, actually two other specialized tools that I use. A very thin brush for the buttonholes, and then when it comes time to dry, I find a little squeeze bulb syringe. Does a really good job of knocking the water out of some of those really tight little crevices, especially on the buttons. Alright, I will probably speed this up and give you some pleasant music to listen to so you don't have to just watch me scrub in silence. It's not that interesting, but just for the sake of transparency, this is what I do. Areas that I see get a lot of crud built up, these little end caps here where the black trim goes on, and make sure you get those really well. Alright, we got everybody. Let's rinse. Now, before I mentioned a couple little tiny crevices that are hard to get into with a towel, or just even air drying can sometimes not work well with these. So that's where the syringe comes in. So I just try to line it up on some of the harder to reach areas. Again, just to make sure we got all the heavy pockets of water taken care of. Our mute button also has a little channel in there that's very hard for air drying to get taken care of, so that's another good one for the syringe. These are some other very small pockets and channels that's good to get a little puff of air into, just to be sure. Now that that's done, we'll give them a couple hours to dry off, and in the meantime, we have other work to do. Okay, we're out of the bathroom. They're letting things dry off in there, so they'll be ready for us to reassemble when we're all done with the soldering. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get some of the gunk off of our black plastic frame here. One thing that I made for myself when I was getting started on all this was a couple of different spray bottles with various solvents and chemicals that I use. This one is our IPA. I stick with 99% isopropyl alcohol for most of my cleaning, and it does a very good job. I think you'll find most people who do this kind of work will recommend that. So give it a little spray there, and then take one of our little, you can use a toothbrush, or they make other types of brushes specifically for this. But this can get some of the gunk off that we don't need. Give it a nice good scrub. Alright, so get down on the little surfaces here where it makes contact, just to make sure those aren't gunked up. And then I'll give it a once over. Oops, excuse me. With some cloth here. Don't mind Reese. Sometimes she helps me out with my work. Alright, the other trigger wasn't too bad, but we'll go ahead and get it anyway. Every once in a while you'll get some little pockets of gunk inside the engraved letters for the L1, L2, so on, so I like to give those a good scrub as well. Okay. Also, let's actually break out the Q-tips for this one. These are the little contact pads that the buttons, the little carbon pads, will make contact with. And that's what signals the button presses to the system. So if those get build up on top of them, that's something that we want to get rid of, otherwise they may not register button presses correctly. So if we get a Q-tip, get that wet with some IPA, and then we can just go over those little pads. You can see we've got a little bit of up there, so go ahead and rub down the rest. And one down here. Alright, so that should be pretty much all the work that this piece needs for now. So now we get to the hard part, or fun part, depending on how you look at it. I am not an expert technician at this. I started this as a hobby. I found that I would like to get involved with something kind of creative or productive in some way, so I thought, well, soldering seems interesting. I started off by repairing game consoles and older cartridges that didn't work, and found that to be fun, but I wanted to get into something a little bit more challenging, so I got into the controllers. But I will say, I'm not an expert. This is not meant to be a tutorial. This is just how I do it. I can, if for some reason I get questions on this, I can try to address those, but I'll go through what I typically do with my process, and if there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But the first thing that we want to do is I add some new solder to the old solder, because sometimes if you're working with older solder, oftentimes it's a no lead solder, which has a different melting temperature than leaded solder. It can make it easier to melt for when you're removing the solder joints from the previous stick, to mix in some new leaded solder on top of it. So looks like one of the cats has walked across my workstation here, so I'll try to clean that up. Was that you? Was that you? It's my assistant Reese. Alright, so I'll switch to the microscope here so you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, we are now looking at the back of the PCB, and as you can see, there is some sort of white crud that's built up on there. That can be caused by a number of different things, but normally I try to get that brushed off at least a little bit to give us a nice clean surface to work with. I'm not using any of my solvents here, just trying to knock the heaviest of it off. Everything will get a nice good clean when we're done, but helped a little bit. Okay, so I've heard that you're not really soldering unless you're using flux. So we will be adding some flux. This is a rosin flux. And ignore the paper towel crud on there, that's not important right now. So this is a material that will allow, basically it makes the solder flow, just flow better. It does that by helping remove a layer of oxidation so that the metal can bond, and basically just makes life a lot easier if you're doing soldering. And during this process I will also be reapplying some fresh solder to the pads to which the rumble wires will be soldered. Again, I just like to refresh as much of that as possible and to ensure I'm getting a good connection. So here's what we'll do next. I have some leaded solder from MG Chemicals, and it is a mixture of lead and tin. And I will begin by, I've set my soldering iron to 425 Celsius. I usually do it a little bit hotter. I like to get my soldering in and out as quickly as possible so that we don't have to spend too much dwell time on there. So you should see this melt. And I was just reminded to turn on my fume extractor, so excuse me. Odds are I'll be speeding this up too, because it's not the most exciting feeling. Just adding a little touch to each one. Now at this point I'm going to use my solder vacuum. So that is a tool that has both a heating element and a suction element in it, so it will melt the solder and then suck it up into a little reservoir. So usually, ideally, it makes the soldering or the melting of the soldering much easier and quicker. So we'll check that out here in just a second. So at this point, the solder should be pretty much removed from the contact points, so I will then try to remove it, the actual sticks themselves. Normally I do a little bit of a nudge with the needle nose pliers to force those out, and they usually come out pretty easily. In the event that one of the solder joints has not completely been removed, we might need to go back over it with the solder sucker again, but we'll see how we do. Number one, where are you? There you go. And then number two. There we go, like pulling a molar. Alright, so we'll check for any damage traces or any kind of issues that we need to address. Looking pretty good. I think it's time to put some new sticks on. They only fit one direction, so we'll go ahead and line them up the proper way. Make sure all of our legs are going through. Nice and flat. And what I'll do is I will go ahead and tack in two corners, check my alignment, and then do the same on the other side, and then we'll go to the microscope so you can see the soldering of the rest of the pins. Never hurts to reapply a little flux. Turn the fan back on, it's going to get noisy. And here we go. Okay, that's those 2 anchor points. Make sure we're still nice and even. Looking good. Now for number 2. Alright, no gaps. Alright, we'll head on over to the microscope. Okay, here we are back under the microscope. Again, we have our fume extractor on, so sorry about the noise. But here we go. Add a little bit to the different contact pads for the wires, just to get that built up a little bit. Tin those in advance. And then I'll do a last little melt test just to reflow all of them to make sure that they're good. Alrighty, let's get this side. Okay. Time to clean. Now that the soldering is done, we need to get the melted flux off of the board, as well as cleaning up any of the burnt flux that got scorched onto it. So I have a special flux remover spray that also came from MG Chemicals, and then a final application of IPA to get the final bits of the residue off. I use these Chemtech Science wipes as almost like a blotter, so I will spray her down and then soak up what dissolves with the paper, and then go through a couple applications of that until we get it nice and clean. So again, we start off with looking something like this, and hopefully end up with something that looks a little more tidy. So be here in a minute. Alright, it took 4 or 5 applications of both the flux remover and the IPA, but I do believe we have ourselves a clean PCB at this point, so we can go ahead and move on to the next step. It was very nice of the seller to put the symptoms of whatever the controller was suffering from on a sticker so that I could tell where I needed to look when it came time to fix it, but would like to take that off, because now that I have hopefully remedied that situation, we should not have this problem anymore. So bear with me while I try to peel this thing off. Success. Ready to go. So next up, we will go ahead and give this a little bit of a spray down with some IPA. Give it a little brush time, and then we will do one last pass with a paper towel. The brush is really just for the heavier stuff, if any. This one didn't look like it was in too bad a shape, so it shouldn't need a whole lot of brush time. So we'll just go ahead and give her a good once over. And this side also looked relatively clean, but again, gunk likes to accumulate in that little ridge right there on the back. Sometimes the ribbon won't cooperate. There we go. All right, we're looking nice. Okay, last but not least, good old paper towel. Looking pretty good. I think we're ready. Alright, we have the front of our controller here, so let's go ahead and work on rebuilding some of the things we had to take apart. So we have our touchpad here. Let's go ahead and reacquaint that with the black bit that it was originally paired with. This only goes on one way because you'll see the hole for the cable is off center, so you can tell which side it goes on. Go ahead and run that through. And on this side, don't know how well that will register, there's a little pit in this plastic tab, and there's a little extension here on this piece that should fit into that. When it locks in, you can then snap it on, and then don't forget to put your screw back in. Wouldn't want this to come flying off in the middle of a big gunfight or anything, right? Alright, next step, reattach this frame. So again, we have, make sure your cable is inside the rectangle, not on the outside. And here's where that small amount of flexibility that this frame has comes into play. I'm going to go ahead and get one corner set, and then you can kind of stretch, push, bend to get it snapped into place, and it should click pretty firmly there. So it still has a little bit of wiggle, like it always does, for that. Alright, and now we're going to go in here, make sure our top is under our little bar here, and then the little loops will go around the screw posts here. It takes a little bit of persuasion sometime, but there we go. Everything's nice and snug. A little bit of play there, like it should. That's how you want it. Next, I do my start and selects. And these also have a correct way to go in, and the angle of it with the little shape that you can see there around the base should guide you as to which side is which. It is. Shouldn't be too much of a complication. With the face buttons, you'll see that they have little tabs, and those are unique to each button. So you just drop it into the slot, and then you can sort of rotate it until it drops into place. They made it nice and easy for us. Hey, right there, first try. There we go. And you can tell the difference between the silicone pads if you weren't keeping track earlier. The one for the face buttons has distinct circles on it, and the one for the D-pad does not. And there are little holes that will line up with our little posts here so that you can be sure that it's making a good contact. So just kind of line it up and then press down, and that post should go straight into the little hole, and that will hold it in place. So you can, don't want to lose my start and selects, but see? The D-pad has one extension on it, the rest do not. That extension little tab goes on the bottom, and it lines up with the receiving end there. And same as before, there are little posts that go into the holes on the silicone pad. Just line her up and press down. Alright. There we go. PlayStation button. One of our smaller ones here. Goes right there. And our last silicone pad does have a top and a bottom, but they have little peg holes so that you can't get that in the wrong direction either. They really take a lot of the guesswork out, which is nice. we go. And then our microphone mute button. Tabs go on top. Clicks right in. So there you go. There's your front panel, or your front face of the controller, reassembled. Excuse me while I get some debris out of there. Alright. Now, at this point, it's time to put the hats on our sticks here. So I ordered a big bunch of replacement sticks from China off of, I think it was AliExpress. So there is a little slot in there that has an orientation which can only go one way, and it will line up with the posts on the sticks. Gonna give it a good firm push. It should click on. Okay. Now we grab our black frame, and it also has little notches that will line up with the posts in here. Depending on the model that you're working with, you may have to be cognizant of this ribbon cable. This model has a notch cut into it so that it can freely move in and out of there. Some don't, so you might have to maneuver that in there yourself with some tweezers or your implement of your choice. I'm going to go ahead and screw this back into the front here. Okay. Now is a good time to do our microphone ribbon cable. And we're looking for that section right there. There's a little hole with a tab on it. You just run that up through there. Sometimes it takes a little persuading, but it will go eventually. Insert this little tab into the slot here, and that will hold it in place. Sometimes it can be uncooperative, but persist and you will receive. There you go. All right. Make sure the hole in the ribbon cable is looped around that little tab there, and we're in good shape. It's now time to send the motherboard home. Make sure your wires and ribbon cables are clear of your path, because they can get trapped underneath. And then it's a whole big thing to go after and get them. So we'll go ahead and I usually have a screwdriver or tweezers available to get things out of the way. Especially this microphone cable, it loves to hide underneath. There we go. And you can push the board in, the sticks should fit right through. And you can go ahead and reapply your ribbon cables. Sometimes it helps to use tweezers. At least to get them started. There we go. Very nice. Last but not least, this little fella. Okay. At this point, we get to do our last bit of soldering for the project. I I don't think we need the microscope for this one. We're just going to solder the wires back onto the motherboard for the rumble motors and for the triggers. And that's it for the soldering. Now, to finally lock all this together, it's time for our battery tray. So again, we'll go ahead and pop this in. There is a little post, actually a couple of them, that will fit into corresponding holes on the board. And you want to make sure that these little guides on the bottom are grabbing the wires. These are supposed to keep the wires from drifting down into the clamp area there. So just make sure those are folded underneath each so you can see that. Okay, we need a screw for the middle here. Firm up nice and tight. Alright. Battery time. This has a tiny little ridge on it where it should only fit into the slot one direction. And then guide the wires underneath this little clasp here and it should hold it in place. Look good? Okay. Oh, and don't forget one last microphone ribbon cable. And there's the tiniest of tiny little tabs that you can tuck it under there. I don't know how important that is, but that's the way it comes, so I try to send it home the way it came in. Time to go ahead and put the back on. Oh, heavens. I forgot the speaker. Even us professionals make mistakes, right? So you want to make sure that the little raised parts of the speaker, which are kind of hard to see, are making contact with the gold points here on the motherboard. So that's that. And so I had to go back a couple steps to the ribbon cable phase, but did not have to desolder the wires for this one. And tuck the little tab. There we go. Good as new. Alright, final step here, back of the case. I find it works better if you can get the screw holes in the top lined up and then click it in the rest of the way. I don't know how well that's coming through. So there we go. I will go ahead and redo the screws here. You're probably not that excited in watching that. Okay, we can go ahead and pop on our shoulder buttons here. There are little tracks that you'll need to line up with these little tabs, these little prongs here. So just watch carefully as you're putting it in, and it should fit into this little tray right above. And it takes a little effort to push them in, but once you get it there, it'll snap right on. Okay, same thing over here. Should bounce back pretty easily. Okay, final piece. the trim. So you want to put these prongs in first into these little gaps, otherwise it doesn't fit so well. And then you kind of just nudge it forward and then snap the ends over the back. And you may have a little gap here. I find if you put your fingers up here and down here and just give it a squeeze, clicks it back into place. That's those two little pesky tabs that were giving me trouble before. All right, time to test. Okay, and we're about to connect it with the USB port. And you should get a little glow of the, there it is, of the charging lights. To connect, that's our guy. Now, you may notice in some cases that the sticks may be slightly off center. That's normal. That happens with every set of these controllers or sticks that I put in. So all we need to do is hit calibrate stick center and it will do some programming there. And now you'll see they are dead center. Another thing that we will do is calibrate stick range. So now we rotate the sticks slowly twice in each direction. And this is just telling the system how the range of how far the sticks will go. Okay, then we hit done. And I always give it one more stick center just for good measure. All right, now here's the part that can be a little bit misleading. I'm going to do check circularity, and we actually want to see a couple percentages of error is what they call it. The games and consoles are expecting a certain range of fluctuation in the center of the stick, and the percentage that it's telling you is how much of your signal is going in or out of the expected range. So we'll do this and we should get, there we go. I've heard various descriptions of what the ideal range is, but most seem to agree that anywhere between 5 and 10 is considered acceptable. So we are within normal parameters there. And then we will check over here and do our button test. Both triggers, both shoulders, all four of those. Start, select, D-pad works, sticks move, mic, PS, touchpad. We are good to go. Save changes permanently. And now let's see if our fellow will sit still on the screen. Looking pretty good. I'm going to move him around a little bit just to make sure that the stick doesn't, have a spontaneous little problem. There's the other stick. I think we're in good shape. That was the mute button, and there's the guide button. Well, thanks a lot for watching, and if you have bought a stick from me on eBay, that is the same process I do for every single one, and very similar for the Xbox as well. If I need to, I can upload a video of that one. It is slightly different as far as how the actual placement of the sticks go, but as far as the cleaning, configuring, all of that, extremely similar. So, but that's about it. So thanks for watching. Bye.